Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Checking out Bitcoin. This is looking like a potential setup for a continuation move higher after that shakeout reversal that we saw here a few days ago, really a day and a half ago. And since then, price has been sitting pretty tight. I'm still holding my long that I entered once it breached back over that 7100 level, and I'll point out some targets that I'm looking for as well as some support levels that I want to see held if this is to continue higher. We'll look at Bitcoin, we'll look at a handful of alts that are trending higher, outperforming BTC a little bit on the way up, as well as the total market cap dominance and some potential levels to watch for maybe alt season, maybe another alt down leg, depending on which way the Bitcoin dominance decides to break out. But first, quick reminder, the new nodeinsiders.com site is live. Go check that out at nodeinsiders.com. If you want to get more information on that, you can go to learncryptotrading.info. Of course, they will both be linked in the description here on the video, but you can check that out, get a little bit of a preview, get an understanding of what this all is here. But as a quick overview, you get access to proprietary indicators, this bull momentum index, as well as the trading bot status, some trending names, alerts, bot status, automated watch list, as well as access to our private Slack group and the full video course library for any of my courses. So check that out. There is a discount code. I did post that on Twitter, but for those of you that are interested in that, if you want to check that out, you'll get $20 off your first payment. That discount code will run through January, and that's code 2020. So when you check out, you just enter code 2020 and you'll get that $20 discount. So let's get to it. So looking at the coin market cap here, it's an interesting thing to be watching because going back through 2017, right? Prior to that, I mean, yes, there were other altcoins, Litecoin, for example, a bunch of names from yesteryear that really don't trade anymore. Feathercoin, remember that? Namecoin. But for the most part, it was primarily Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin was the sole representative by far of the crypto market, right? And it was, way up there in the 80-90% mark. But then in 2017, of course, the BTC dominance really dropped off as we saw new coins come on to the scene. We saw big cap names really emerge, names like Aetherium, XRP, Litecoin, for example. And since then, it's been a pretty wild ride. But it's interesting to see that after the little bit of a rally we had in 2019, the Bitcoin dominance has just been sitting tight here for a little while, starting to consolidate. And the big question is, which way will it break out? What that means is, if it breaks to the upside, then you're going to see the altcoins take a pretty good hit versus Bitcoin again. But if it starts to dip down again, then you could go on a nice little altcoin rally versus Bitcoin. The best case scenario would be for the alt traders if the BTC dominance dropped as the price of Bitcoin goes up, because what that means is the altcoins will be on a very strong rally, and that'd be the ideal scenario. If we go to the BTC dominance chart here, before I go back to the Bitcoin chart here, wanted to point out the BTC dominance chart. So let's zoom out here real quick, look at the weekly chart, and I posted this on Twitter, and this is just an interesting little bit of a view. I generally don't do technical analysis on the Bitcoin dominance chart or the total market cap chart. I just tend to look at the individual names, but we see the Bitcoin dominance really tanking here in 2017 as basically there was a massive alt rally throughout the year off and on, and it basically went down from 95% to a low of around 36% before getting that rally over the past year. It's interesting to see that this rally that we saw in the Bitcoin dominance paused right at the 618 retracement level. If you do a Fibonacci retracement from the peak to the very low point, the bounce so far has paused right at that 618 level, just shy of that 74 mark. But the more important thing is, look at this little consolidation that we're seeing here over the last couple of months here. And it's going to be interesting to see which way this finally breaks out. Something I'm keeping an eye on. Certainly that is starting to constrict and go sideways. Of course, it could go sideways for quite some time, which will essentially mean that the alts and Bitcoin are moving in parity. So if one goes up, the other goes down. but that's just not been the history here. Generally, you're seeing some back and forth movement out in and out of Bitcoin, back and forth into the alts. Here at the end of 2018, we did see a little bit of a flattening, and then going into April, the alts, especially some of the bigger cap names, did have a pretty good run. But then, of course, once we saw that massive breakout on April 1st of last year, it was just all Bitcoin throughout most of the rest of the year. So something I'm watching, definitely going to keep an eye on that. But for now, I mean, this is a high level view. It's just kind of an interesting data point. But when it comes to my day-to-day trading, I'm just going to be focused on the individual names, the big caps, of course, what's trending and so forth. Let's take a look at Bitcoin here first. So looking at BTC, we saw a pretty good shakeout over the last couple of days. And I posted this on the Slack group, something I was keeping an eye on. It was certainly looking like it was trending lower. We started seeing the trading bot issue some short sell signals here as this thing started to break down. But as I posted, I said, keep an eye out for a shakeout reversal. And really the level I was watching was 7,100. It's just not unusual to see that happen. You have a very clear level of support, and it's, you know, you'd see the stop hunting, you see the big shakeouts. Sure, this could have absolutely just continued lower, and I wasn't doing anything until I got confirmation. But essentially my plan was, if it continues lower and we get a bounce that fails here, then that's a pretty good secondary short entry. But if it quickly found a reversal and started to bounce, I wanted to wait until that 7,100 level was recaptured and closed above, which it did very quickly, and basically moved from 69.30 and way up to about 72.80 before pausing a little bit. And so I was able to jump onto a long position there around that 71.60 level. And right now I'm still holding that. We'll see where it goes. The moving averages are catching up, and here we've seen a pretty little bit of a brief consolidation, a little bit of a flag pattern starting to form as these moving averages catch up. And so that's what I'm watching here near term, really starting to tighten the stops. Essentially, that first plan was the swing low here around that 68 was kind of your, if it loses that level, it was a failed breakout. But because it moved so strongly off that level, I'm not using that as a stop anymore. My stop is now much closer to that 7,100 level, keeping it a little bit tighter. But what I'm looking for is a potential retest of that 7,600 level, which has just been the level that it has not been able to break above here in recent time. If we zoom out a little bit, going back to basically the month of December, you can see that 7,600 level was a pretty key turning point here. Again, resistance didn't quite make it here this time, around 75.30 before pulling back. So that's what I'm looking for, is that first target. If it continues higher, I'm looking for a retest of that 7,600 level. If that breaks, then 7,800 and then 8K are my next two upside targets above that. On the downside, really, I mean, there's a little bit of a support being formed. Of course, you can get a quick shakeout below that. So really the level I'd be watching is around 7,200 is my near-term support I want to see hold. And then of course, 7,100. If it loses 7,100, that was a failed move, and that's probably over at that point. It's going to make a lower high and continue the downtrend, likely make a lower low at that point. So that's the way I'm looking at it for the very near term. If you look at the daily chart, big picture, it's still very much range bound. It is coming off of a long downtrend here for several months, and here in recent history over the last 6 weeks or so, we're seeing this really starting to consolidate, potentially forming a reversal pattern here on this daily chart. But again, the same thing, the key level is just that 7,600 level. If the daily starts to close above that, then things start to look a lot more positive for the bulls, and then at that point we'd be looking at some bigger targets to the upside. But for now, that's the first level line in the sand that I'm watching, and that's the way I'm going to be trading it over the next few days until we break out of that range. Another name to be watching here is Aetherium. This is the ETH BTC chart. Now keep in mind, this gap here, this move to the next level up, is not a big percentage move, but I'm certainly watching this as a potential reversal. ETH has just been in a big downtrend versus Bitcoin. You can see, just zooming back, it's just not been positive. But here in recent past, we're seeing a potential low being formed. We saw a nice little rally and it paused, and just since that point, it's just really been choppy, but consolidating, potentially setting up a little bit of a breakout move. If it can close above that 184 level, then what I'm looking for, and this is on the BTC pair, mind you, not dollars, then I'm looking for a run up to this next resistance level around 1950 or so. Again, not a big percentage move, but it's important because if ETH can start to outperform Bitcoin by a margin of 5, 6, 7% on the way up, then that would just bode well for the overall altcoin space. And I mean, as we saw in the last live stream I did where I reviewed the 2019 performance, for the most part, the alt market had just a dismal performance versus Bitcoin. And so I'm looking for a little bit of a reprieve from that bearishness as we head into 2020. And so seeing ETH break out versus Bitcoin would certainly be positive. On the small cap land, there are certainly plenty of movers. There's been a lot of quick spikes to the upside, as is always the case. There's always something moving. So let's take a look at a few of those names. Going to the trending list here, KuCoin shares is showing up on the list today, up about 5% versus Bitcoin. Decentraland. Now, Mana has been in and out of this list for some time now. Over the last couple of weeks, I've traded in and out of it as well, and it just continues to trend higher. This is the 4-hour chart coming off of a little bit of a consolidation. The daily chart, however, just looks pretty solid. I mean, ever since December, at the end of November, it found a pretty good low, paused a little bit, and then just early December really started to march higher, and so far, so good. Now, this is a volatile name. If you look at the direction and how wide some of these moves are, they're pretty big. You get 12% pullbacks there, 14% pullback here, pretty deep pullback here, almost 20%. But all in all, since December, has had a solid move up already about 48% in the last month or so. So definitely one to be watching. The trend continues. Big picture though, it's just now coming off of a very long time low, has been forming a big accumulation zone since August of 2019, and looks like maybe it's starting to get some momentum. Definitely a project I like fundamentally, something I've been into for some time, but certainly from a trading perspective, keeping an eye on this one as well. What other names are on the list here? We've got GoChain has been volatile here, showing some action. That's a real small cap name. We'll look at that chart here shortly. A couple of big cap names showing up here. Bitcoin Cash, Manero, Bitcoin Cash SV. Let's go take a look at some of those here. So looking at Bitcoin Cash, BTC, looking at that chart here on the Binance view. Let me go to the 4-hour view. The chart, by the way, is cut off in terms of history because Binance finally changed the ticker from Bitcoin Cash ABC back to Bitcoin Cash, just BCH BTC. So that's why you're missing that history there. But if you look at the time frame here since the 27th, found a pretty good low, a little bit of a bull flag pullback on this 4-hour chart, and then of course breaking out with some pretty strong volume on the way up, has been trending here over the last couple of days. Bitcoin Cash SV also showing some good relative strength versus Bitcoin since around that December 24th, 25th low that it found, and has already moved up from that point versus Bitcoin around 25%. So pretty good little move there, showing up on the trending list. Let's see what Manero looks like. Manero, a little bit of a pullback to that 10 EMA, but again, another pretty strong move here in the last day, up around 12% versus Bitcoin. So showing some good relative strength here. It is running right up to that prior support, now resistance level. So it'll be interesting to see if this is where Manero decides to take a little bit of a pause, but letting these moving averages catch up would certainly set up for another rally higher. GoChain, let's see how that one looks. That's a name from yesteryear. Big picture again, this one did have a nice rally in early December, and it paused right at some long time resistance. If we go to the daily chart, after a little bit of an accumulation zone here, like some of these other names, had a pretty good run, but you can see where it paused, just looking left, right around those April, May lows of last year. That's where the rally paused. Pretty decent pullback, but here in recent days, starting to show a little bit of life, some more volume coming into that name. Again, small cap name, much more volatile than some of these others, so certainly I would make note of that. But that's going to be it for tonight, guys. Bitcoin market value, the bull momentum market value is leaning bullish right now, even though the price has basically gone flat. It's just some choppy sideways action, but near term looking positive. The trading bot status did go short very briefly, again due to that shakeout, but quickly reversed. It's still flat. I'm personally long, so we'll see how this one plays out over the weekend. I will see you guys again on Monday. Thanks for watching as always. Till next time, take care everyone.